The Russian Khmeimim airbase in the Syrian province of Latakia continues to operate despite the overthrow of the Assad regime. This was reported by Yurik, a Middle East observer, on his Telegram channel Middle East in Ukrainian. According to Militani media outlet, the new Syrian government used a drone to conduct reconnaissance of the Bashar al-Assad International Airport, which houses the airbase. According to the released footage, Su-24 frontline bombers, Su-34 fighter bombers and Su-30/35 fighters remain at the airbase. In addition, military transport aircraft AN-72, AN-26, IL-76 are stationed in the airbase. Khmeimim also has helicopters, including Ka-52 attack and Mi-8/17 multipurpose helicopters. Armored vehicles, including the rather rare Kamaz 43269, can be seen on the territory of the airfield. A large number of chaotically parked vehicles may signal that the airbase is a gathering point for Assad regime supporters and airbase personnel among civilians wishing to evacuate. It is known, in particular, from Russian propagandists that the civilian sector of the airfield is already under the control of the new Syrian government. Russian propagandist Ilya Tumanov claimed that both the crews and the aircraft themselves, capable of flying to Russia independently, are prepared for departure. The government of the Russian Federation states that it is negotiating with the new Syrian government to maintain Russian bases in the country, but the outcome of such negotiations remains unpredictable. In addition to the Khmeimim airbase, Russia has a naval base in Tartus. Syrian opposition fighters took control of the Latakia province, where Russian military facilities, the Khmeimim airbase and the Tartus naval base are located, Russian state news agency TASS reported, citing a Syrian source. The fighters did not enter or threaten the Russian bases, a Kremlin source told TASS separately. The claims could not be immediately verified. The reports follow a statement by Ukraine's military intelligence agency that Russia had begun withdrawing its naval and military assets from Syria amid the collapse of dictator Bashar al-Assad's regime. The Kremlin has long been a key supporter of the Assad regime, maintaining a substantial military presence in Syria through facilities such as the Tartus naval base, the Khmeimim airbase, and other strategic sites across the country.
Some Syrians who participated in the 2011 uprising against the regime of former leader Bashar Assad were slowly returning to their cities, friends, and families. The Syrian government fell early Sunday in a stunning end to the 50-year rule of the Assad family after a sudden rebel offensive sprinted across government-held territory and entered the capital in 10 days. In the Baba Amr area of the city of Homs, many welcomed the fall of Assad's government and hoped it would be an opportunity to start life anew. Ahmad Hassan Naimi was a protester at the start of the uprising in 2011, British broadcaster Sky News reported. He was jailed and then fled Syria after his release, but has now returned after Assad fled the country to Russia. "I still can't believe it, I am still saying hello to everybody. I'm seeing my mother for the first time in 14 years, he said, surrounded by his relatives. Abu Faras was 22 when he deserted from the Syrian army and joined the Free Syrian Army in 2011. In recent days he returned to the streets of Homs where he and other journalists and reporters took refuge trying to hold off Assad's forces. There were only a few of us, and even our weapons were limited, he recalled. It took barely 10 days for Syria's insurgents to march from their stronghold in the northwest into Damascus and bring an end to the Assad family rule. Every step of the way brought moments that would have been unbelievable only days earlier. First to fall was Syria's largest city, Aleppo, with a swiftness that may have amazed even the fighters. More towns and cities fell like dominoes in the following days, including Hama and Homs. Overnight Saturday into early Sunday, the fighters marched unopposed into their greatest prize, the capital, Damascus. Assad and his family fled, ultimately taken in by his ally Russia. The insurgent takeover has pushed the country into the unknown. There is potential for more chaos with jihadi militants hoping to seize power and the possibility of conflicts.
هلا اجى هلا اجى
شفت اني بعد 12 سنه يعني 14 سنه رجعت على بيتي ليك بيتي مهدود.
يحاول يحمي الناس طبعا الاماكن العاليه كذا كان ياخذ الجيش الحر بحيث اذا صار كنت منشق كان عمري بوقتها 22 سنه. لا كان العدد خفيف، حتى السلاح خفيف جدا، يعني كان الاعداد قليله جدا.
For the first time since 1973, Israel has entered the headquarters and bases of the Syrian army and seized its heavy weapons. They have already reached the government headquarters and the Syrian bases in Kyivra. They have also taken T-55MV tanks and other weapons. Furthermore, Israeli army began a forced displacement operation against the residents of several villages in southern Syria. Syria TV reported that the Israeli army entered the western outskirts of the town of Jabata al-Khashab in the Kyivra countryside and demanded that the residents hand over their weapons. Israeli army displaced the entire population of the village of al-Hariya after seizing it. It pointed out that the Israeli army began displacing the residents of the village of al-Hamidiyya after seizing it, explaining that Israeli forces also entered the town of Ambatna supported by military vehicles and tanks. It revealed that Israeli tanks were spotted inside the city of Kyivra in southern Syria. Sources in southern Syria confirmed that they had monitored a movement of displacement from the village of al-Hamidiyya in Kyivra after Israeli forces threatened to bomb the residents, while the Israeli occupation army reinforced the deployment of its forces around the Syrian city of al-Bath. Israeli army stormed the municipalities of Ruwayhina and Ambatna in the central Kyivra countryside, where it withdrew from the town of Ambatna after stationing itself in a military site to the west of it, before blowing it up. Currently, the Israeli army is redeploying its forces in the town of Al-Ajraf in the same area. The Israeli army announced in a statement that the 210th Division, in cooperation with special units, continues to operate around the clock in the Syrian Golan Heights under the pretext of protecting Israeli citizens. It said that additional tanks and combat equipment were confiscated in Syrian territory. The Israeli army said its forces were carrying out field operations by brigade combat teams, commandos, and intelligence units in the buffer zone, under the pretext of removing threats and preventing terrorism on the northern border, as it put it. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reported that Israeli forces continue their violations against civilians in the Kyivra countryside, near the border with the occupied Golan. According to the observatory, after their incursions into the towns of Hadar and Hamidiyya and the village of Ambatna, Israeli forces forced civilians to evacuate their homes. The observatory stated that this escalation comes in the context of strengthening the Israeli presence in the buffer zone, in parallel with intensive airstrikes that resulted in the near-total destruction of the Syrian army's arsenal, hours after the fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime.